And our time coming up on 12:05 on this Wednesday afternoon. You're listening to Helping Seniors of Brevard, which is heard every Wednesday from 12 noon to 1 o'clock. And the program is hosted by the Executive Director of Helping Seniors of Brevard, none other than Kerry Fink. Hi, Kerry.
Hey, John Harper. It's always good to be on the radio, and thank you for joining us every Wednesday lunchtime. We are right here on 90.3 FM, WEJF, and also want to welcome our listeners who join us online at WEJF.net. And also a big hello to the growing number of folks who end up hearing this as a podcast a little bit later on down the line, because we always put these shows both out on the Helping Seniors website at helpingseniors.brevard.org. We also put them out on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page, also Helping Seniors of Brevard. And it occurred to me, John Harper, that we are on December 1st. So does that give us, I don't know how they officially count this. Does that mean there's 24 shopping days till Christmas? Is that the way it goes?
That's the way it goes, yeah.
So for sure, we are in the thick of the holiday season, and was just thinking, that's basically just a few weeks. We're less than 4 or 5 weeks away now from that. So as we're thinking about that, and then, the next thing that falls in right after that is New Year's. And so we thought, since we have the luxury of having our very special guest, he's board certified elder law attorney, friend of the Helping Seniors Network, going back, since before there was a Helping Seniors Network. It's none other than Bill Johnson. How are you today, Bill?
I'm doing great. Good afternoon.
We just published the December issue of the Helping Seniors newsletter, which is found center section in the Senior Scene magazine. And there's actually a really good article. People ask us a lot of times, they say, when they first hear about Helping Seniors, they say, what do you guys do? And so there's a great article in there put together actually by none other than Nancy Deerdorf, who is now our Director of Operations. So excited that we have Nancy Deerdorf, who has a background as a registered nurse, and she's been a board member on the Helping Seniors board since before there was a Helping Seniors. Helped Joe just like you did back in the Alzheimer's days when Joe was getting Joe's Clubs built and all that. But we were talking about that as we get ready to go into the new year, people really need to get a good handle on what Helping Seniors is all about. And so she did a really nice article where she talks about that our mission is really, we serve the community basically in 3 ways. We have the Helping Seniors information line, which is that free call to 321-473-7770, 321-473-7770. And since Joe Steckler, our president and founder, got this organization rolling more than 10 years ago, we've helped more than 4,000 families free of charge, getting them connected to information that helps along their own aging plan. And then the other thing that we're really big on and have been since day one, you can't pick up a newspaper without seeing a column that Joe has authored, or you pick up the Senior Scene magazine, you look for the Helping Seniors newsletter, or you look for our radio programs like we do right here every week on 90.3 FM WEJF, or our TV shows and things like that, because we're always about getting information in your hands that is going to help you age successfully. And the third thing that we are known for doing is we're the advocates for seniors here in Brevard County. We live in a county, Bill, I'm telling you things you already know, but 1 out of 4 of us is over 65, and 1 out of 2, if you just want to use AARP's definition, is considered a senior at 50 plus. So we always say in Brevard, you're a senior, you love and care for a senior, God willing, you're going to live long enough to be a senior. And that kind of brings us to our point of today's show. This is an idea that we've been talking about a little bit back and forth, and I was asking Bill Johnson, I said, do you think this would be a good time for us to go ahead and jump into it? Because here we are, we're getting toward the end of the year, and as everybody works through December and all the different holidays, and we finally get down to New Year's, everybody starts making those New Year's resolutions. And so we started talking about, everybody always says, I'm going to do better next year about this than last year. And so we've been talking about this title called Getting Your Ducks in a Row, because I wanted to ask you, maybe first of all, you see people come into your office under all sorts of different circumstances. Some people are planning ahead. Some people are in the middle of a crisis. Some people are trying to sort out a situation. And I was asking you before the show, I said, just by you've been doing this so many years, how many people come in and are more or less perfectly prepared? And it was interesting to hear your just kind of like off the top of your head response to that.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I was thinking it was something like 25%.
Yeah.
And then there's probably another 50% that their documents need to be adjusted somehow. And then you have probably another 25% that just don't have anything done.
It's so interesting because actually this is going back to the November issue of the Helping Seniors newsletter, and our president and founder, Joe Steckler, had done an article that kind of leads us into this topic. He says this is a senior to-do list, and he hits a couple of points. He talks about financial preparation. He talks about legal documents, which we're going to spend a lot of time talking about today, filing system, cleaning your garage, emergency planning, family heirlooms, medical records and medications. And so it's a great article. You can find it on the Helping Seniors newsletter. But I guess it's one of the reasons why you spend so much time you do these training classes, you get seminars, you educate people, you take your time out of your busy schedule to come out and join us each month on the Helping Seniors radio network. And I guess you're really invested in trying to help people get this right.
Well, it's interesting you bring up that list because I just read a wonderful article today that talks about this. And the way they talked about it was that basically when you are going to have a conversation with a parent who's aging, you probably want to have that conversation while they are still working.
Oh,
you
good.
Want to have that conversation because A, they're competent.
Mm-hmm.
You're not kind of a threat because they have income and their money is coming in and you're not asking for anything and there's no appearance you're trying to get your inheritance early or anything.
Right.
But it would be good to ask them all these questions like, what are your finances?
Right.
Where are they? Have you done these legal documents? Where are they? Which brings you to the filing system. And then what are we going to do if there's an emergency? Right. What kind of insurances do you have? Who gets what family heirloom? Have you designated? Have people asked? And who's your doctor? What medical conditions you have? And do all that while they are still, before they've retired, because you're probably going to get a much better picture than if you wait until somebody's got a diagnosis of dementia. And then you're trying to piece it all together and they're not an accurate historian on anything and you're in a mess.
And that's so often, tragically, what you often wind up with in your office. Somebody calls you and they're in the middle of a crisis because mom or dad or that close relative is now suddenly, they've had a stroke or there's some reason why they can't take care of themselves. And now the concerned relative is trying to figure out what steps to do. And I've heard you talk about this. We've done many radio shows about this. Like that's like the most unfortunate set of circumstances to meet with you under.
That is. And when people retire, I think Money Magazine did a survey, and the top two things people are thinking about when they retire is, one, do I have enough money to make it through retirement? And two, how can I maintain my lifestyle?
Right.
These bigger questions are way down the list. People aren't thinking about these things. I think at number 13 was, what do we do about long-term care? That kind of stuff is way down the list. But that's why, as a child, you probably should have these conversations to bring these things to the forefront.
We were talking about this actually last week. Jennifer Helen with Seniors Helping Seniors was here on the radio program, and we were having a little bit of a conversation about, particularly this year, where the holidays were free to travel and visit, maybe in a way that wasn't really encouraged at all last year because of COVID lockdowns. And so for the first time, people may be showing up at mom or dad's house to kind of, celebrate with them. But at the same time, there's always that element of, well, let's see how mom and dad are. I imagine you probably get a flurry of calls as people visit mom or dad and realize that things aren't as safe or good for them as they had hoped.
And you're reading my mind. That's why I brought this topic up now, because people are visiting their parents at Thanksgiving and at Christmas. And, somebody can sound perfectly fine on the phone, and then you go end up at their house and you see it's a total disaster. Yeah. And you get a whole different gauge about what's going on in their life. So this is why this is a probably timely topic to do during the holidays. And you don't have to be, intrusive. You can bring it up casually. What do we do if you or mom has some sort of problem? How do we know where to find everything?
That's a good point. There's another good friend of the Helping Seniors organization. Her name is Heidi Kuchenbacher, and she's for years been with Hibiscus Court Assisted Living and Memory Care and the corporate entity that works with that. And she did a program with us sometime about how to have the talk. And, this is good what you're saying. From your experience, how would you suggest, hey, you're going to be over there, it seems like a great way to walk into it unobtrusively is just to ask the question like, well, if there was an emergency, what do you want us to do, or how,
Correct. And, and like I said, the time to have that conversation is before they retire.
Right.
That made a lot of sense to me, because you're going to get a competent person who is putting everything in his place and probably organized. They're working, and you can find out exactly what's going on. Whereas if you wait till after retirement age, who knows what could happen then?
We've done so many programs talking about getting all these documents you need organized while you have all the things needed to do it, the capacity, the time. There's no stress or pressure of a crisis on you. And yet so often that's why I asked you the question at the start of the show. So how many people come in and they bring in documents and they think they're all covered? And I think you told me about a quarter generally are okay with what they're presenting. And about 50%, you say up to 50%, just as a guess, would be people who thought they had it all in order, but something maybe needed to be corrected so it did what they hoped it would do at the right time.
Well, some people go to a lawyer, get all these documents done, and then never look at them again. Yeah. They just sit in a filing cabinet for 20 years,
right,
and nobody's revisited it.
Yeah.
And, laws change, circumstances change, people die, people get married, people get divorced. And so you should review your documents at least every 5 years at a minimum. And also if there's major life events, births, deaths, marriages, divorces, that kind of thing.
Yeah, there's a whole part of this. We're talking with Bill Johnson, board certified elder law attorney of the law firm William A. Johnson. And, we've had this conversation. First of all, people are moving to Florida like crazy. So this is one of the fastest growing states in the nation, I guess, as a reaction to all of everything that's been happening over the past few years. So a lot of people must show up and bring you out-of-state documents, or worse yet, there may be people who didn't bring you out-of-state documents. And it seems like the absolute worst time to find out these documents are flawed is when there's a crisis and somebody's at the hospital and can't fix it.
And we do have statutes that say if the documents were valid in the state you executed them, they'll be valid in Florida. But the problem usually arises is how they're interpreted. And so subsequently, it's always best if you move somewhere to have an attorney in that state look at everything.
Right. And I know you and I have done programs together specifically on this thing of power of attorney. That's one of the things that Joe pointed out in that article, which, again, you can see Joe's article, The Senior To-Do List. That was published in the November Helping Seniors newsletter. But he was talking about how important that is. And I remember you schooling us the fact that here in Florida, the power of attorney doesn't just go, well, this guy can do everything for this person. It has to be much more detailed than that.
Right. It has to be very specifically. If you don't specifically give somebody a power, they don't have it. So a lot of states have kind of check the box formats that don't work well in Florida at all. So it is much or very important. And just because a document has the words durable power of attorney in the title doesn't mean it's a good document, which is another thing we run into all the time, is that people think they're covered and they've never read their document. And then we're trying to, get cash value out of life insurance, and there's no clause in the power of attorney that allows you to do that.
Yeah, because if you're having a crisis, all of a sudden there's all these things that have to be dealt with, right? The medical folks need money, the regular bills that you had at home keep going, and you're somebody's trying to step in and figure out how to right the ship while it's.
And that's a bad time to find out that your power of attorney doesn't work.
I would think that would be horrific, because we've had many programs on guardianship, and sometimes that ends up being the expensive, but it's the only route you could take in certain cases.
Correct.
Wow. So why is it so let's say roughly 3/4 of the people that see you have made some sort of an attempt, and we've talked about this before. A lot of times, I guess, you'll see people come in with documents that they got at an office supply place or one of the online places, or maybe they even had an attorney, but who helped them do real estate or something else, but isn't an elder law attorney, so they don't have the specialization. And I guess a lot of times you end up having to clear some of that kind of work out.
Correct. Usually, I would say about 50% of the documents that are done online come in and they're all messed up.
Wow. So we think we're doing the right thing, but obviously this is not the thing to be a do-it-yourselfer on.
Right. I have people come in and they've done a will online, and they come in and they've signed it, but they didn't have any witnesses.
Wow.
They just think that's optional, I guess.
Well, we don't know.
And so subsequently their will isn't even valid.
So here's a question. As people come to you with these things, and why is it, you've been doing this a long time. You've done training courses, and I guess you probably understand that as people come to see you for a specific, presentation, seminar, things like that, obviously those people have at least are thinking about this the right way. And so they obviously have enough interest that they're willing to invest the time. And probably many of those people, after getting good information from you, say, hey, we really do need to sit down and look at this. But I imagine there must be so many people who think, well, this just doesn't apply to me. I don't need to worry about this.
Well, yeah, there's a lot of denial. There is a lot of denial out there. When you ask people, well, what would you do if you had a long-term care event? And a lot of people just have no idea.
Right, because they say, Medicare covers that or something. That we have ideas but we don't have facts.
Right.
Well, why is it, do you think, this topic is, what's the number one thing we would do? That's why we started talking about getting your ducks in a row, because we were trying to make this feel a little bit less intimidating. I don't know. Do you think we're just scared about it in general?
I don't think people like talking about death or disability.
Right.
I think that's not a fun conversation to have.
No, I guess not.
So I think people avoid it. They don't talk about it, which is probably the number one reason that we don't have anything prepared. Certain cultures believe it's taboo to talk about it.
Oh, I'm going to wish something on myself by doing this.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, it's a hard conversation. People put it off all the time.
Right.
We'll do it at this time. Oh, well, we forgot to do it. We'll do it. Everybody was having a good time, and we didn't want to bring this up,
Yeah.
And they just keep kicking it down the road.
And I guess there's also probably people feel like, I got plenty of time to get around to that. It's kind of like the house repair we meant to get to, right?
Sure.
And I remember, this has been years and years and years ago in business. we were doing a business deal connected to a radio network thing that we were involved in back in our corporate days. And I remember the attorney who was consulting, he was explaining, he said, he was talking about all these clauses, like what happens if this person were not able to do the job. And at that time, I was like a young whippersnapper. So I'm like, he goes, you cannot suppose that you're going to outlive the person that
Right.
just because this person is this age and you're this age. And I guess we probably fall into that a lot. So I got plenty of time. I can deal with that.
Yeah, or you get people who go, oh, well, if my spouse dies, then I'll go back and change my document. Well, that's all supposing you have the capacity to go change your document.
Right. And that's another challenge, right? Because we assume that whatever health of mental state and cognitive abilities and all that, we just assume that that's going to stay with us. And yet the reality is most of us have been around enough people to that are aging that we understand that things do change. You know, if we can recognize it in other people, I guess it's probably hard to point the finger at ourselves, but
Yeah, the thing about aging is usually when you have these ailments that come up in the aging context, they could be catastrophic immediately, like a stroke,
Yeah.
or they could be just a slow, gradual progression,
Right.
like dementia. And so you may have a lot of time to get your ducks in a row, or you may not have any.
Yeah. That's why this is so important. This conversation that we're having, we're talking with our very special guest, a longtime friend of the Helping Seniors organization. It's Bill Johnson, who's board certified elder law attorney, sharing some thoughts as we begin this topic, this exploration of getting your ducks in a row. And actually, that's going to be a drumbeat for us in the Helping Seniors organization in 2022, because we're all about helping you make an aging plan. And so as we come out of these into the second half of the show, we're going to cover a little bit more specifically some steps you might take and things that Bill Johnson would suggest that you consider, at least from the legal side of this. But before we get to the mid-show break, I just wanted to have people get your name and your number. And you guys are doing training seminars all the time, right?
Yeah, we do seminars over at One Senior Place at least a couple times a month.
Okay. And how do people get in touch with you, find out the schedule and all that?
They can call our office at 321-253-1667.
All right. That's the law office of William A. Johnson. Bill Johnson, our guest today. We'll be back with the second half of the Helping Seniors radio program in just a moment, and we'll be talking about getting your ducks in a row.
You're listening to Helping Seniors of Brevard here on 90.3 FM. The program heard every Wednesday, 12 noon to 1 o'clock. Let's get back now to more of the show. Here's the Executive Director of Helping Seniors of Brevard and the host, Kerry Fink.
Thank you, John Harper. It's always good to gather around the radio lunchtime on Wednesdays here on 90.3 FM, WEJF, blasting up and down the Space Coast and even getting into Treasure Coast and the fringes of Orlando. It's just a great signal to be on. And also welcome to the people who could literally be global, for that matter, at WEJF.net, where you can hear us online, including the Helping Seniors radio show every Wednesday at 12 noon. So what we try to do is bring you senior information that will help you on your aging plan. And our president and founder, Joe Steckler, he has always, from the day I met him, and John Harper, John is the executive vice president of the Helping Seniors organization. He's been a board member since Joe started the organization. And on top of that, you actually go even farther back, John, right? You worked with Joe when he was building the Joe's Clubs and all of that. And I think the story goes you got him into the radio career, right?
That's right. He was so involved with everything with the Brevard Alzheimer's, and I had suggested to him one day that he should be doing radio to promote the Alzheimer's even further, and he liked the idea, and the rest, as they say, is kind of history.
Yeah, and I wanted to kind of because you guys both have this unique perspective. You've been around Joe, and so I want to welcome back our guest to the second half of the radio show, none other than board-certified elder law attorney Bill Johnson. And the topic that we're talking about today is getting your ducks in a row. And the reason I wanted to ask both of you guys a little bit about this was Joe has always talked, ever since I've known him, which goes back to I met Joe just as he was getting the Helping Seniors organization started, and he was trying to get the media going and get awareness for it. And almost the first words out of his mouth were, he said, I've understood and tried to do things that help people with memory concerns and ways for families to work through those difficult situations. But he said, I've discovered people have so many challenges as we get older that go well beyond just that category, and we've got to do something that gives people a resource or a way to think about this. So he's always talked about coming up with an aging plan. And we kind of closed out the second half of the show, and I just wanted to hear a little bit also your thoughts, John, too, about here we are. Why do we not do a better job of getting our ducks in a row?
Well, I think you and our guest Bill Johnson kind of answered that before we went to our weather break here at the bottom of the hour. And the fact is nobody, no matter what their age, really likes talking about that. They would prefer to talk about things that are not related to getting sick or dying.
Right.
And
who's going to win the football game?
That's right.
Yeah.
And I really think that's the bottom line of what it comes down to. Now, it's interesting. I think when you reach a certain age, I often joke with Jim Votro here in the control room with me, but I joke in the fact that you reach a certain age, you no longer talk about women, you talk about your ailments. You know?
Right.
And so it has kind of evolved to that. But nonetheless, I think it's because people simply put off the inevitable and they don't want to talk about it. Just like making funeral arrangements. Nobody wants to talk about that.
Yeah. There's a gentleman, his name is Troy Denault. He has a company called Sotir LLC. He's been a friend of the Helping Seniors organization. And I remember him. He has a company that specializes in helping people make the right decision about what a good living solution might be. If mom or dad can't handle it at home, or maybe they could, but they need some modifications to make that work. But the other area that he kind of excels in, he goes, there's 140 assisted livings plus here in Brevard County, which I was astounded when I heard that number, 140. Because we hear about a few of the, kind of the top-notch premier, but there's 140 of them. And so if you're trying to figure out what to do, the right move for mom or dad or that relative, how do you even begin to sort that out? And he said, Kerry, nobody wakes up on a random Saturday morning and says, hey, let's go tour assisted living places. And so, Bill Johnson, I wanted to ask you, you see people come in various states of preparedness. What do you kind of hope for walks through the door that makes it the most successful outcome for the people coming in?
One, that they have capacity,
right?
That they're able to do documents or modify documents, because if we have to do that, we need competent people to do that.
And that it moves totally off the chart if that's off the table, right? That's now your guardianship or crazy.
Yeah, now you're into a $10,000 bare bones guardianship,
Wow.
And of course, if it becomes a contested guardianship, you can watch TV and look at Britney Spears and all that.
Oh yeah,
The price goes through the roof. So it's much better to have all these documents done ahead of time and avoid that whole mess.
And that's a real reason to get your ducks in a row because, almost our whole life, Bill, they tell us, what are you planning for, right? When we're kids, what are you going to be when you grow up? When you're a young adult, like what's your career going to be? Are you going to get a house? What are you going to do? Then you have kids. Are you going to save for retirement? Are you going to save to send them to college? What are you going to do? And then so oftentimes, and I think you alluded to this in the first part of the program, is we mistake a retirement plan thinking about the finances, like, I want to be able to go to the country club and play golf. I get that. That's good. But that's different than what Joe is talking about when he talks about an aging plan, which is we should be better about this here in Florida, right? Because we understand a hurricane plan. We say we don't want the hurricane, but we realize we live in an area where it could happen. So we better think our way through this. But aging isn't a thing that could happen. If we live long enough, it's going to happen.
Correct.
So how do we help people really think through? I think one of the best ideas that I would think of is, kind of grab the bull by the horns and learn that it's not quite as intimidating as people think it is. Is that what people get when they come to one of your seminars?
I mean, it really isn't as intimidating as people think it is, and they just need to have, how they want to distribute their estate and who they want to be their decision makers in the event that they lose capacity. And, it can be as simple as that. Generally, like I said, we want the people in when they're competent, and that is a couple reasons. One, they have to know what they're signing. But the other reason is, when you have your wits about you, you are much less likely to be unduly influenced by somebody or coerced by somebody or under duress. If you come in and you've already got the diagnosis of dementia, you're forgetful, and one of your 5 kids shows up and is helping you do everything. Next thing you know, that kid's going to be on all the documents and that kind of thing. So, while you have your wits about you, you can really think this stuff through and be free of anybody trying to twist your your logic.
And it's not only that, right? It's like you explained this in some of the shows we've done in the past, that we always think of a family as being a cohesive unit, and yet every one of us knows how dysfunctional families can be. Everybody's got the crazy uncle or something like that. But really, in this case, where you have a lot of, it's not the first marriage, it's the second marriage, or maybe the third marriage, or who knows. And so now you've got kids who come from completely different places, and, everybody's got their own opinion about what should be done. Everybody's opinion may not necessarily be the same as yours.
Well, that's a great lead-in, because 50% of people over age 65 live with an extended family.
Wow.
So they have lost a spouse and remarried, or divorced and remarried. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, we have lots of second marriage situations that complicate things dramatically.
So if somebody was going to make kind of like, here we are, we talked about this in the first half of the show. We're in the month of December, which ends up being a great month. We're going to have a great holiday season this time, because the COVID will not be front and center as it was, caused so many people to not be able to travel and get with family and all of those kind of things. Yeah, right. as we're watching Omicron.
Yeah.
But let's just stay on the path that we're on for right now and say, this is going to be a year that I think people are going to be able to get together and visit in a way that they didn't get together necessarily last year, because travel was so restricted and so discouraged. But then it's probably going to create those surprises we talked about, like, wow, they're having a little more trouble taking care of things than I remembered from 2 years ago.
We had somewhat of a snapshot of that, because there are folks I had who I represented, and they had loved ones in a skilled nursing facility. Mm-hmm. And of course, all those locked down.
Right.
And you could not get inside to see your loved one. And then when they started allowing visitations, some people found out their loved one was in dire straits because they hadn't been getting the care they were supposed to be getting at the facility. The best way to get good care at any facility is visit.
Yeah.
Let them know that you got a pair of eyes on the person.
Right.
But obviously with COVID, you couldn't do that.
Right.
And so subsequently, they were coming into situations that, were quite terrifying.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I remember you explaining the supreme difficulty. You guys are considered essential business, so you stayed operating through everything because the business of all this just kept moving. But I remember you talking about the extreme lengths that you would have to do because you couldn't go inside an assisted living to visit with a client. And
we'd stand outside into the windows and watch them through the window signing documents. And
incredible.
Do signings in our parking lot so they wouldn't have to come into the building, that kind of thing.
Right. It was quite the unusual time. But I guess it comes back to
and again, obviously, if you already have your documents done and you're in good shape, well, you didn't have to do any of that.
Right. Well, that's true too. And I guess maybe COVID, just the fact that COVID arrived on the scene made us understand a little bit more about mortality than we had thought about before.
I ran an ad in the paper. Basically, it says, if you've been putting off your documents till the big one hits, well, the big one hit.
Yeah. Yeah, well, that is so true. So I guess the question comes back to, if you're serious about maybe taking a step forward, because again, with the holidays, people tend to also get a little bit reflective, like, wow, I could have done this better this year. I definitely want to be a little bit better about how I do that next year. And within a few weeks, we'll all be talking about the diet we need to do and all those kind of things that we always say to ourselves every January 1st.
New Year's resolutions.
Right. But why wouldn't a good New Year's resolution be, let's really tackle this? It doesn't take that much time or money, does it? It just takes getting involved.
Correct. It takes getting some knowledge and then just getting about and doing it.
And what happens here, as I've gathered, we're not talking about savings of 10%. We all go crazy for Black Friday or Cyber Monday because they're going to give us a great discount. We're going to save 25%. We're going to save 50%. What if, I know you can't, but I'm just saying, what if as an elder law attorney, you could say, I could save you, I don't know how many hundreds of percent, because if you do it this way, it's going to cost you this. But if you do it this way under an emergency, it's going to have all these zeros attached to it. What?
Exactly. Yes. And in an emergency situation, if you don't have the documents, you're getting into the tens of thousands of dollars.
So the best thing you could give your family for the holiday season is getting your ducks in a row.
Right.
So how does it begin? If somebody says, okay, you're cajoling me into this, what do I do next?
Well, you would make an appointment with a lawyer. That would be the next step. And usually the lawyers have some sort of intake form, so they can get an idea of who your family is, what your assets are, and that kind of thing. And then you can sit down and have a conversation about how you want to do it, leave it to your family, who you want in charge, that kind of thing.
And, what if maybe sometimes there's two problems. One, we don't understand the process, so we're intimidated by it. Maybe the second thing is we think it's going to be very expensive, and maybe we're thinking it's going to cost us more than it's going to cost. But I was thinking maybe a third area is maybe we don't know what to do. Like they stick this in front of you and say, do you have a advanced directives? You go, I don't know.
and so that leads me to one of my favorite things that happens all the time is, what do you do when you don't know? You go next door and ask your neighbor. And there is so much bad advice that people get from their neighbor that it's crazy because, one, if you're like most Floridians, your neighbor probably moved here from New Jersey.
Right.
So they're going to tell you all about how things were done in New Jersey, and it has no application to Florida law.
Right.
And then, people have just strange ideas on how they think things work. And you really need to go to somebody who does it day in, day out.
And that's such an important part of this, right? Because if you're going to take a step ahead, it seems to me like I realize the answer is, there's a lady down at church who knows how to do these things online or something like that. I'm sure you get a lot of that too. And sometimes a little knowledge can be a dangerous thing. And I always go, why do you think people would go to an expert? Would you want the lady down the street who goes to church with you to fly your airplane on the next trip? No, you want a pilot, right? So if we're going to do something that potentially could affect everything in the next 20 years of my life, wouldn't you want somebody who's checked out and qualified for that?
And there's certainly a lot of, we're talking about the next steps. Mm-hmm. You can also find at any given time an attorney either online or in person, live, talking about estate planning and the documents. I know on your website we have 3 or 4 of us who are on there on YouTube talking about the different things that you need. And you can educate yourself that way as to figure out what it is you're looking for.
That is a good point, because one of the things that we do on the Helping Senior side is we are, by definition, we are a Florida nonprofit. And so we are not we tell people, it's like, if you get involved with helping seniors and you're a sponsor, you're not, this isn't your advertising. You go out and you find out on, publications or YouTube. What we're hopefully doing when we're doing our mission correctly is we're trying to get you to think about these questions so that it will kind of goad you into action, because I think, it's kind of like that old saw about fear. It's like fog, and if you could ever distill the fog down, you get like a cup full of water. And boy, if you sit down with somebody who knows what they're doing and who has done this for years, who's a specialist in this, it really seems like it's going to help you and help your family, and it's going to save you not a little bit, not hundreds of dollars, not even thousands of dollars, but potentially tens of thousands of dollars if you run into one of those situations where otherwise you're stuck with a guardianship.
Correct.
So again, if you were just looking across the table at a family and they're saying, well, I don't know, do I have the time, the resources to do this? I know you could say, I could tell you 1,000 stories, but what's the most effective thing that you've shared with a family to say, we need to get this done?
Well, the most effective way is you tell them what the consequences are of not doing anything.
Right.
Yeah, it's, I used to share office space with some criminal defense attorneys. And I said, how do you guys get paid? It seems to me like, if somebody's out there stealing stuff, they probably don't have any money, laying
Right.
around to hire a lawyer. And one of the attorneys said, well, Bill, jail is a great motivating factor. And it's true. People don't want to go to jail or prison, and they will find a way to get the money together to hire a lawyer to defend them.
Interesting.
And it's kind of the same thing, when we talk to people, a nursing home is a great motivating factor,
Right.
that you don't want to be in one and you don't want to be paying $10,000 a month.
Yeah.
That nursing home bill is horrendous. And folks, we have some nursing homes that are even higher than that.
Well, that's a whole area.
13,000 a month.
That's a whole area we haven't even talked into, because I know one of the areas of your practice is you help people structure things so that they can correctly do Medicaid planning and things like that, should something ever come up like that, because otherwise you're going to be wiped out in like days or months.
Yeah, most of us can't afford spending $13,000 a month for any period of time.
No, that would be kind of a crimp on everything.
Right.
So
that's that's the downside of not planning. So when people tell me they don't want to do this or that, I'm obligated actually to tell them what this course of action, here's the pitfalls with it.
So if you get somebody in your office and you actually get to speak at that level of, I would call it wisdom to them, then it pretty much follows through like, yeah, I'm either going to spend a little bit now or I'm potentially going to be.
And you can have those some people still will not move. They will not do it.
Well, I guess it's a little bit like insurance, Bill, right? If you have, why do you have insurance on your home? It's not that you are, well, if you paid off your mortgage, it's not like you have to have it. It's just all of a sudden the whole house could be gone. And now you got to start from scratch. And this is kind of what we're talking about. This is kind of like, it's not really insurance, but it's kind of like getting your ducks in a row.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So so let's go back through this. You do a lot of training sessions. You talked about that you guys do things up at one senior place. Those are generally open to the public. What kind of topics are you typically covering?
Generally, I talk about estate planning. I also talk about Medicaid planning, how to qualify for Medicaid to have that defray the costs of a long-term care event. I do talk about VA aid and attendance benefits, how to qualify for that. That can help defray the costs of long-term care. I have talked about pet trusts, which is an interesting topic.
What is that?
Well, in Florida, you can leave money to your pet, and you put it in a trust, and it gets doled out, and they take care of your pet until your pet dies.
How about that?
And then I talk about special needs trusts, too. If somebody has a person who's disabled and they want to leave them money, there's a certain way you can do it without it counting as an asset to them and knocking them off of the public benefits.
Wow. So all of this, you basically donate your time into those situations. And how does somebody find out what the schedule is when those are coming up, or if they just want to call you and get in touch and say, okay, you guys have talked me into this, I need to bring my stuff in?
They can call our office at 321-253-1667. They can also call One Senior Place. I don't have that phone number off the top of my head. And I believe One Senior Place also has a website that they could go to and look up these things.
Yeah, and I do know that in the back of your Senior Scene magazine, so if you get your December issue, they always publish the schedule for what things that are going on.
That is true. It's always in Senior Scene and some of the other related publications.
Now, when you mentioned, I was thinking about this, because when you were talking about the VA, aid and attendance benefit, things that might accrue to a veteran, or the Medicaid planning, I remember this was another thing that came up about the reason to get your ducks in a row, because I remember you explaining things like look back periods and things like that. So sometimes we think we're doing the right thing because we're going to gift this to our kids because they're going to inherit it anyway. But now we've unwittingly created all sorts of problems because we did something without understanding all the little
consequences,
details that go with that.
Exactly.
So there's another reason why you got to get your ducks in a row.
Right.
So while we're kind of like rounding the corner into the home stretch here, if there was like one main point that we want to get out to listeners today, here we are, holiday season 2021, maybe a great holiday gift to your family is take care of this stuff.
Yeah, and it's December, so take that required minimum distribution out of your IRA because it's that time of year, and all your tax records will be coming here probably beginning of January.
Right.
So put all those together and have your legal documents all done. And, obviously, if you already have them done, go look at them. This is the perfect time to go look at them while you have a little time off.
Oh, it's such good advice. Bill, one more time. If you also have a website, right? You have Florida Elder Law.
FloridaElderLaw.net.
Yeah, it's easy enough to remember, FloridaElderLaw.net, and you've got a lot of good information and also your phone numbers and everything there. But before we close out today, let's give that phone number one more time.
It's 321-253-1667.
All right. Thank you, Bill Johnson, who's our elder law attorney, board certified, been part of the Helping Seniors family going way, 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 way back. And so appreciate you volunteering your time to help us help people get their ducks in a row. And so on behalf of Joe Steckler, our president and founder, Nancy Deerdorf, our operations director, the entire Helping Seniors of Brevard team, we're going to continue on this theme of getting your ducks in a row as we celebrate holiday season 2021.